would it mean if we decided not to do the feed yard and put everything out on grass? What would that represent if we wanted to produce the same amount of beef that we're producing today?
If we wanted to maintain beef production where it is today, and we went away from our concentrated feeding operations such as feedlots, where we're using grain and other feed resources and managing these cattle in confinement.
And really doing only that, a small part of their lives, right?
Right, it's a small part of their lives. You know, for instance, these steers standing behind us right here, they were out on forage or grass somewhere until they weighed 750 or 800 pounds. So the first 12 to 18 months of their productive life, they were out in a grazing environment. And then for from the time they weighed 500 pounds to say they weigh 1,300 pounds, when we take those to slaughter to process for beef, they'll spend in here. And so they've spent 12 to 18 months out in a grazing environment, and they'll spend 5 to 7 months in this confinement system to put on that last 500 pounds or 600 pounds of weight on the animal. So it's not like they're consuming grain their entire life. It's for that final stage to push. And we do that to capture efficiencies. If we went to a system that was 100% non-confined production out in a grazing environment, and we wanted to maintain beef production where it is today, we would go back to some of the concerns from groups such as the World Wildlife Federation that suddenly we are going to be taking wildlife habitat and other habitat away from our wildlife, because we would have to expand the land use area that would be necessary to maintain beef production at the current level. So we'll be drawing on more of those natural resources that today we enjoy as for wildlife habitat or recreational purposes. They would have to be pulled into the system. We would end up, if we had to maintain the same amount of beef production, we would have to make a large increase in the cattle population in the United States, because we'll have a slower turnover. 24 months, they've reached a desirable beef product to convert for human consumption. If we put that out into just a grazing environment like they use in some other areas of the world, those animals might be 30, 36, 40 months of age before they ever reach the point that we could have a desirable product or have the same amount of beef product. So not only would you have to increase the number of animals to produce the beef, would have to increase the amount of resources we're using outside of the feedlot, and then the turnover through that system would be slower in terms of from the time of birth until the time they're available for a food product. The turnover would be a lot slower.
So I think Jude Caper, in that study you referred to, she said that we would need another 64 million head of cattle in the United States to produce the same amount of beef that we're producing today if we went to a total grass feeding system. And that's because of the inefficiencies of that system compared to what we find in the feed yard.
And once again, we go back to some of the things we were talking about previously. If we went to that system, we will increase greenhouse gas emissions or the carbon footprint of the industry, because we've got more animals necessary to produce the same amount of beef. They're out for a longer period of time, so that same animal is out consuming feed and contributing greenhouse gases to the environment for a longer period of time. And then also the feed resources that are used. We talked about the fermentation processes and the quote stoichiometry of fermentation. If they're out in that grass-fed environment, the system itself is going to be producing more methane because of the conversion of those carbohydrates in the rumen to the energy substrates lends itself to produce more methane. So we would increase the carbon footprint of the beef industry if we went to that type of production system and attempted to maintain beef production where it is today.